Welcome to the Build Resilience series, one day at a time. In our previous series, we have seen Simon, his resilience reserve, how what was really draining his resilience reserve, the lack of support in his life, and the various challenges he was going through. In the second session of this same series, we would look at in the journey of self of Simon, how we would help Simon build a practice, or I should say, build his ability to fight back the odds of life. So, in this series, we will cover the phase 4 and 5, which revolves around the various techniques and tools that I've shared and assisted Simon to learn, which can help him get into action and build that practice. Because I would like to mention once again, resiliency is a life skill and it's not built overnight. It requires a bit of practice, discomfort, and from case to case, the problems we are in and at, the severity of it, the effect it is having on us, will or are the factors that will help us determine to what extent we need to practice it and what all that we need to practice it. Here's the Simon's technique that we have used. Now, one thing that I would like to highlight here is these four quadrants basically are the main key factors on which we become resilient. So Simon, from somebody who's demotivated, depressed, lacking in support, not really being able to cope up with the challenges at back at home and even at office, to build his resilience muscle, we need to look at four major factors of life, and that together constitute the very life skill of being resilient. The first one is the emotional factor, then you have the physical, then the mental. There are two more, social and spiritual, which I have not included here because that's not really valid to Simon's case. So I've put in here build the practice because I wanted him to immediately get into action and start practicing all that I was helping him, teaching him, and making him learn. The emotional element is more to do with the emotional side of us. It's the EI here is the emotional intelligence and our ability to bounce back, to deal with challenges of life. Our emotions has a tremendous and a key role to play in it. So in case of Simon as well, while he couldn't really make sense of where he should be headed, at the same time, the office politics in which he was caught up in is a present example which tells us how naive he was in managing his own emotions and regulating them. That was precisely the reason why he suffered and he stayed stuck, not being able to deal with his difficult client, boss, and the personal conflict back home over a property dispute that was going on. So in these techniques, I had helped Simon understand what is it that he could do from the start. EI is a subject in itself. It's really wide and has a lot of depth. But in case of Simon, I just gave him three very specific tools that he could adapt every time he goes back into the job world and had to deal with his toxic boss or the office politics. The second factor here, which help us build our resilience muscle, is our physical self, which is our body. Anytime we are stressed, we it's our nervous system that really store our stress. And there's a complex functioning of our neurons, of our hormones, and in tandem with our nervous system, which not just store the stress in our body, but it is manifested in many ways. Skin allergies, digestive system issues, lack of appetite, lack of sleep, being irritated, or eating disorders. All of this are just few examples when stress causes havoc in our physical self. So, in case of Simon, the goal here was to help him calm down his nervous system so that he's in a position to deal with the stresses of his life. In the video description of this particular series, you will find link to two of the guided meditations which I had shared with Simon. Along with that, there's one more, which if you practice can help you not just calm down your nervous system, but find a perspective to what's really going on. And that's exactly what Simon needed in that hour. The third most important part of building resilience is to have a healthy mind. And this is where the concept of understanding our thoughts, our perceptions, our belief system goes into. In case of Simon, when he mentioned he lacked a support system, I gave him 3 basic journal prompts. Along with that, there's a case-specific journal method that I usually teach, in fact, to almost all my clients. And this also was something that I shared with Simon to help him answer specific query related to that specific issue which kept him stuck, be it his toxic boss or the distant relative, which created a lot of issues in his life. Finally, to build the practice, Simon was taught the very concept that a solution, if he really want to experience the ability in him to deal with the challenges and stresses of life, or to be more resilient, he needs to get into action and create a plan around that. Because all of these might sound very good to listen to, but they will not work. They're just like medicine unless you put it into use. So, a medicine which you have to, that bitter pill, you have to swallow it, only then it works in your body. Similarly, for Simon, my emphasis for him was to get into action. And I'll tell you in our next series how that was split up so that he could learn to put things into practice and experience those changes.